Hey everybody, welcome to the 14th episode of Treehouse Knits. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Rachel. You can find me on all the places as Treehouse Knits. I am on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Ravelry. I recently started a Treehouse Knits page on Facebook because I was finding that on Instagram I really like to share information with people, and it's hard to do that on Instagram if it's a linked item like a video I'd love to share or pictures other than pictures. So that's why I started the Facebook account, and I think it's also an easier way for some of us to talk to each other. On Facebook or on Instagram, you lose posts so quickly. It's a fleeting kind of social media. So that's why I started the Facebook page. Please come like me. It's just Treehouse Knits on Facebook. You can also find me on Ravelry, again, as Treehouse Knits. I try to keep everything up to date. So if there's something I talk about today, a project that you have some questions on, feel free to check out my Ravelry project page for that particular project. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of projects I'm working on, and I want to also share with you some technology ideas. You'll see I'm kind of weaving in those technology tips throughout. And we are also going to continue on with our sheepy segment. Today we're going to be talking about the Old Norwegian Sheep, or the SPAELSAU, which I'm sure I'm saying that completely wrong. But we're going to learn a little bit about that sheep. First of all, I have on my Branches and Buds cardigan by Carrie Bostic Hogue. I wore this to YarnCon a couple weeks ago. It's made out of quince, chickadee, that's the gray, and then up here, Freya Hand Paints. You can get all the information about this sweater on my Ravelry page, but overall, I love it. Fits me so well. It's the chickadee breathes. It's a sport weight yarn that keeps you the right temperature. I did not overheat at the festival, which I thought I might because it was a beautiful sunny Chicago day, but I felt so comfortable all day in it. So can't say enough about it. I'm really happy with how this sweater turned out. The other item I wanted to show you was over here on Elsie, my mannequin. This is a linen scarf. It's actually a pattern from Church Mouse. It's their diagonal wrapper scarf. And I made it out of Euro flax. That's Luette Euro flax in the sport weight. And this is the willow color on size 8 needles. So it goes really, really fast. It can be worn as a scarf, kind of like this, or as a wrap. And it's really great for summer, for spring, summer, and fall. It feels cool on you. I don't know how to explain the linen other than when you wear it, you feel cooler. But it does keep the chill off you. And when I knit it up, it was not a pleasant experience for me because linen has no give, and when you knit it up, it feels really tough. It's just not the most pleasant fiber to knit with. But since I've knit this, I've heard from a few people some tricks and tips to make the knitting experience a little bit more enjoyable. First, I've heard that if you wash the yarn before you use it a couple times, it softens up right away. And when I blocked this, it turned into a different yarn. I put on Instagram a before and after if you're interested in seeing that, and I can plop actually the pictures in here too. Yeah, so it just turned into a softer, drapier fabric once I washed it. So wash your yarn before, or some people have said if you take the linen yarn and you wind it on your skein winder several times, wind it all up, then rewind it up, that just the movement of the yarn, the friction of the yarn in the ball winder softens it up as well. But I threw this in my washing machine and in my dryer, and that's the beautiful thing about linen, which is made from flax, which I believe on my Facebook page I put a link to the process. It's a very old process. This was the process for making fabric before wool. So It's an ancient process of taking flax and turning it into linen. It's a fascinating one, and if I have not put it on my Facebook, I will put the link to that particular process on my Treehouse Knits Facebook page. You can also learn more about this technique and its history if you join our book club that I'm doing with Meadow from the Woven Road. We have a textile reading group on Facebook. Feel free to just get the link from below in my in the box below here, or on thknits.com. That's my website, and that'll link you to the Facebook page, and we'll certainly accept you to join on in. We've got, I think, 125 people now that are reading the textile book. Let's see if I have it in here. I do. Women's Work. You've heard about it if you've been listening to the show for a while. It's going really well. We're on chapter 6, but you can start at any time, and even if you don't read the book, it is pretty fascinating to just kind of read through everyone's comments and thoughts on the books. You know what, before I jump into a couple of projects that I'm working on, I just wanted to mention that we're getting close to 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and with 1,000 I would love to do a big giveaway. So if there's anyone out there interested in that's a maker that's interested in submitting any of your items in for our giveaway, feel free to do that. You can just give me a shout out on Instagram. I know for sure that I will be giving away this amazing book making. It's the second version. It's the Fauna version. Making is published by Matter in the beautiful state of Maine. It's a beautiful book. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. The reason I picked up this particular this particular issue was for the knitting, but when you go through it, there's sewing projects that interested me. There's a couple of recipes. There's even a really cute coloring page, which would be super fun just to sit with your markers, and it actually gives the type of sheep. So there's it's kind of funny with the Icelandic sheep. They've got a Lopi sweater. With the Shetland sheep, they've got a Shetland Fair Isle. Super cute. Super, super cute. But especially loved the very, very pretty wrap in here. The Open Water Shawl by Melanie Berg. I thought that was gorgeous, and I wanted to make that at some point, so that's why I got the book and just fell in love with it. So I thought I would love to share this with a viewer of the podcast, but we're getting close. So once we get to that 1,000, I will let you know, and we will figure out a giveaway for that. So the first item I want to share with you is this Gramps Cardi. I have a little nephew being born soon, and hopefully the nephew's mother is not watching this show, but if she is, my brother will be surprised. But this is the Gramps cardigan. You've probably seen it before. It's a Tin Can Knits pattern. So well written. I love the attention to detail with the cute little elbow patches. I think this particular sweater, I was talking to somebody on Instagram about it, it works really well for little babies. That's when it's just the cutest. This little baby wearing something Grandpa would wear. And I still have to find 4 buttons to put on here. And nothing, I really haven't been in search of them. I thought it would be cute to do some sort of leather button, something library-ish. But I wanted to share with you, a lot of times you'll be knitting a sweater and it'll say, you know, make the button band. You need to get 5 buttons in that amount of space, and it's a 2-stitch, 3-stitch, 4-stitch button. Go for it. And you're supposed to do the math. Well, I don't know if you've heard, you can go online and do a Google search for buttonhole spacer, and you'll get a whole bunch of websites that have calculators on them. Or you can get an app if you have an Apple product. And let me just show you the app. It's an app that was actually made by, oh, what's her name? Amy Herzog, the custom fit lady. She has this app. It's called the Knitter's Toolbox. And let me just get to, if I can get to the home page so I can show you what it looks like. So this Knitter's Toolbox has some really neat functions to help you with the math of a project. The one that I used for the Gramps cardigan was the buttonhole spacer. So I knew the number of stitches that I had to work with on the button band. I knew I wanted to place 4 buttons, and I knew that the stitches per buttonhole was going to be over 2 stitches. So I plugged those items in down here, and it gave me my directions on how to make the buttonholes. Isn't that cool? The other neat function of this particular app is the gauge widget. And if you know your total number of stitches or your total number of rows, and you know the width, it tells you your gauge. So you'll see down here, you enter in your total stitches and your total width that you got with those stitches, and it tells you your gauge. Anything that's in that orange color can be changed. So if I want to figure out row gauge, I click on row and it changes it to row. Great, great tool. The third tool on this toolkit is the shaping placer. So sometimes you will be working, say, on a sweater where especially in this particular section of maybe the front panel of the sweater, it will tell you how to do your shaping and how you need to increase over a certain amount of the garment. And what this particular piece does is you put in how many increases per row your project shows you, and then you put in here your starting stitches and how many stitches you need to end up with, and the total number of rows that you need to work across, and it puts out your recipe for getting that particular shaping. The final calculator on here is called the pickup calculator. And what this does is it helps you figure out how many stitches you should pick up in a section. So for example, if you know your row gauge, you know the number of rows in the edge that you're working with, that you're going to be picking up from, and you know your stitch gauge, it tells you, for this example, pick up 86 stitches. That's approximately 6 stitches out of every 7. Some helpful tools out there for us on apps and on the internet too. You can do a Google search for any type of math calculation for knitting, and there seems to be someone who's put a tool out there. So I hope that was of interest to you and that helps you. Okay, so that is my Gramps cardigan. Now, second thing I wanted to show you today, you're seeing it all over the internet. The minute I got this pattern, I wanted to knit with it. And the beauty of it is I didn't need to go out and purchase any yarn because I had plenty of ideas for yarn in my stash. It's the Boosta Beanie. A lot of people have been talking it on the internet. It came out, it came out at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I received the email from Shetland Wool Week about it. Shetland Wool Week every year picks a patron. I always want to say patron saint, but it's a patron. And this year's patron is Gudrun Johnston. And she has created this beautiful hat. There's 3 versions of the hat. Cool color work. I love the simplicity of it. It's one of those patterns where it's not a lot of work, but it looks like it was. That's the best kind of pattern ever, isn't it? So I jumped right in and I looked in my stash. I thought I wanted to use, I was really in the hot pink gray mode. So these are the yarns that I chose. Madeline Tosh is the pink in Torchiere. It's a Plucky Knitter in the dark gray. And then the light gray is Leading Men Fiber Arts. And here's where I am with my Boosta Beanie. Now it calls for like 120 stitches. I have a big noggin and thick hair, so I did 128. So hopefully it will fit me, but if it doesn't, I want to make another one right away. This pattern goes really fast, and I think it'd be fun to do a version with a little more tonal colors. But look at how that Madeline Tosh, it's got kind of the hot pink, red, and orange, and purple in there. It's a definite yarn that has a lot going on. I love that. So super thrilled about that. The other thing, when I was knitting this, I kind of wished that my pinks would gradiate lighter as I went up. And that would be another fun thing to do, maybe similar to my sweater here, with scraps. You really don't need a lot of yarn for this project. The most amount of yarn you're using is the dark color. So find yourself, you know, a couple hundred yards of a dark or your base color. And then if you just kind of work in your scraps moving up, I think it'd be really pretty too. So many options, and I'm sure on Ravelry there's already, if you look at the project pages for people, there's already some great ideas out there. All right, Secret Skein Mystery Along. I talked about it last week as that really unique knit along that's happening. It is created by 3 ladies. The first is a dyer, Ellie and Ada. Got my skein from Ireland. I think it's beautiful. This is what I'll be knitting with. It starts this Friday is the first clue is coming out, and the first podcast episode of our mystery story that takes place in the fictional land of Twilltown. That is all I know about it. But if you want more information, you can, I'll put a link in it in the show notes on thknits.com. But you can also check out the podcaster who's also co-running it. It's the Cottage Notebook Podcast. And you could also check out Mina Loves Design. She is she has an Instagram account, and she's on Ravelry as well. So any 3 of those places you'll find information about this particular knit along, and I will share with you how it's going along the way. So if you're on Instagram, you're familiar with Instagram stories, and I find I have so many people I follow on Instagram that a lot of the stories I just kind of go through real quick, but there's a few that really stand out. One particular Instagrammer really stands out for me, so I wanted to just share that with you so that if you're interested in the same thing I am, you go on to Instagram and make sure you're following them. It's Wing and a Prayer Farm. And I don't know the name of the farmer that's doing the Instagram stories. Maybe it's Tammy. I'll look that up and put the name down here. But their Instagram stories are incredible. She must have her camera with her at all times walking around their farm. And right now it's lambing season. It's so exciting to just wake up in the morning and see if some new lambs have been born. This farmer talks so beautifully to her animals. It's so relaxing. You feel like you're on the farm. You meet all the animals. They have so many different animals. Her site, has a little paragraph about what's going on at the farm. Wing and a Prayer Farm is a happy place to live and grow, and you get that feeling from listening to her or from watching her stories. On our 20-acre fiber farm in southern Vermont, we raise and care for a variety of poultry: registered Shetland, Cormo, Cotswold, Wensleydale, and Merino sheep, registered Angora goats, alpacas, an American guinea hog named Princess Peppermint, mini donkeys, horses, and a Shetland pony and honeybees. Our farm in the Green Mountain State is a beautiful pastoral homestead where the children have grown up barefoot and the pups can run around without a leash. It's just so beautiful to watch this farmer interact with her animals. They're definitely, because they're definitely raised with so much love, and she has a voice that she talks to them with that is, you can tell she's communicating with these animals. It's just a beautiful farm and so fun to watch the stories from there. So I highly recommend you go on her Instagram account and you follow her just for the stories alone. A couple days ago, her stories showed a spinning class that was happening at her farm, and that was really interesting. So there's always something going on at this farm, and I think you'll really love it. So check that farm out. So I think that brings us to our sheepy segment. Today, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the Old Norwegian Sheep. Okay, so the sheepy segment. Over the last several podcasts, we have discussed sheep in general, their characteristics, a little bit of their history, and how they've been used in our history. We've talked specifically about the breeds of the CVM, the California variegated mutant, the Merino, the Corriedale, and then last time we talked about the Icelandic sheep. When I did my research on the Icelandic and discovered that it was actually Scandinavian sheep that were brought over with the Vikings, and those sheep then kind of developed their own characteristics because they were living on the island of Iceland, it made me interested to learn more about Scandinavian sheep and the history of the Scandinavian sheep. So that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about the Old Norwegian sheep. It's also called the SPAELSAU sheep, and this is how you spell that. I think what I'll do is insert some pictures here, we'll talk about it, and then I'll meet you at the end of the video. The SPAELSAU, or the Old Norwegian short tail, is a breed of sheep from Norway. Many consider the Old Norwegian to be the original breed of sheep in Norway, and it is one of the northern European short-tailed sheep breeds. It's well adapted to the climate, and it was domesticated in the Iron Age. The SPAELSAU, or Old Norwegian, stock is about 22% of Norway sheep. The sheep is mainly found in western Norway. Adult males weigh on average 43 kilograms and females about 32 kilograms. This breed is thought to be the origin of the Icelandic, as I mentioned before, as well as for the Faroes and the SPAELSAU breeds. One of the most spectacular animals on the western coast of Norway, also present on the island of Frøya, is the Old Norwegian breed of sheep. This breed represents one of the most primitive kinds of domestic sheep still present in Europe. Probably only the SPAELSAU sheep at St. Kilda is more primitive. So you might ask, how is it possible that a relic population of such an old breed of sheep should have survived on the Norwegian west coast? Well, firstly, it was represented by the rest of the old Atlantic type of agriculture tradition, which is still surviving on the islands of the western coast of Norway, like many other of the remote islands in northern Europe. Also, because the region is pretty much inaccessible, it prevented the import of other breeds. Also, the people living on the coast themselves valued the animal a lot and used the unique mutton and the wool as well for production of high-quality craft projects and products. Most of all, though, the sheep itself have survived because of their ability to survive in such extreme winter conditions. The Old Norwegian sheep is just better adjusted to the climate and the poor vegetation on the coast than many other wild animals, like deer, for example. The animals graze the whole year, and even in the winter they find food outside and have a minimum of artificial shelter and feeding. The Old Norwegian sheep are small-framed with good legs and a fleece varying in color from almost white to grayish, dark brown, badger face, mufflin pattern, and black. Normally, the sheep shed their fleece naturally in early July. All of the males of this breed are horned, and approximately 10% of the ewes are horned, and the rest are polled. The horns on the females are short and kind of goatish, like a goat. The males have normally well-developed horns. So their fleece is remarkably fine, and their inner fleece is very highly developed. The outer coat, similar to the Icelandic sheep we talked about last week, has long fibers up to 30 centimeters around the neck on the males. The wool is highly valued for making high-quality craft products like hand knitting yarns and for felt making and many other purposes. Also, what's interesting is their flocking instinct. So if you compare them to, say, the SPAELSAU sheep on St. Kilda, who lack the flocking instinct, the Old Norwegian sheep has developed a very strong flocking instinct. Normally, a flock of less than 5 to 7 animals will not be able to establish the social structure needed in a flock. Because of this very strong flocking instinct, the breed is now tested for use in grazing areas with predators like bears, wolf, lynx, and wolverines. The maternal instinct is also very strong of the Old Norwegian. The behavior is similar to that of the American bighorn sheep. The mother leaves the flock to give birth from 12 hours to 3 days before the lamb is born and stays alone with the lamb for another 3 to 6 days before returning to the flock. The lambs are strongly defended against enemies if necessary. At the age of 14 days, the lambs are developed enough to follow their mothers and to join playgroups of lambs as well. By this time, the lambs begin to graze too. So their motherly instinct, their maternal instinct, makes it so that this particular breed of sheep is really great for newer farmers because there's not as much handling that's needed to be done when the mothers give birth. One thing I thought was so interesting, well, several things about the sheep. Their yarn was used in the Norwegian old tapestries from the Renaissance and the Baroque times. Also, it's said that the Viking ship sails were made from yarn from these sheep. The wool was also in the olden days used in clothing because it was light, stable, and absorbed very little moisture. So there you have it. That is the Old Norwegian sheep. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Treehouse Knits. If you have any questions, feel free to check out the show notes, which can be found at thnits.com. The link will be down below. I'd like to thank you to all of those people who have reached out to me over the last couple of weeks, be it on Facebook or Instagram or Ravelry, especially down below. It's fun to hear comments and ideas that come from you after you've watched my videos. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and you'd like to, we'd love to have you with us. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of Treehouse Knits.